My name is Tjane Marshall, and this is my story.
Immunity of prosecution. That's all it took for Tjane Marshall's roommate Rashawn Wall to work with state officials and ensure Tjane would be to blame for the murder of Shamika Flood. After Shamika's murder, authorities raided Rashawn and Twane's apartment and seized $10,000 worth of marijuana. The investigators then presented Rashawn with a choice: cooperate with authorities against Tjane and receive immunity, or not only face a drug charge, but face the possibility of being charged as an accomplice to the murder of Shamika. Rashawn chose immunity, and the odds became stacked against Tjane. Rashawn's first move: meet with Tjane and wear a wire to get him to admit to the murder. These attempts were unsuccessful as Tjane maintained his innocence no fewer than 11 times over the course of the hour-long conversation, in which he calmed down a very nervous Rashawn.
I'm a suspect. I am a murder suspect. You are nothing. They trying to fuck with you to get to me. And this is exactly what they doing. Like I told you before, they know that you're scared. They know it. And they gonna fuck with you. As far as I'm concerned, I ain't do nothing, you ain't do nothing. I ain't never go out there, you ain't never go out there.
The conversation was argued extensively at trial, and was played for the jury with a questionable transcript prepared by detectives, where it was possible statements could be taken out of context, so Tjane sounded guilty. For one juror in particular, this was integral to his voting Tjane as guilty. Despite multiple attempts to contact Rashawn Wall for comment, we were unfortunately not able to find him.
When you have a violent crime happen, you almost always have an exchange of biological material. In a murder or an assault, it'll usually be blood. It takes a vanishingly small amount of DNA to get a full profile.
There's no DNA evidence which connects Tjane Marshall to the scene of the crime. Like Twane's public defender said, they couldn't find physical evidence. They searched all the cars he might have had any connection to. They searched his apartment. They couldn't find any evidence. They couldn't find any evidence anywhere connecting anybody to this killing. Why was there no DNA evidence? Over the course of the semester, we reviewed the police files and trial transcripts ourselves to answer this question. It begins and ends with Rashawn Wall, as Hash explains.
Rashawn Wall's testimony provided a convenient explanation for the prosecution's lack of DNA evidence. He had gotten rid of it all. According to Wall, he had taken all the clothes from the murder, placed them in a bag, burned it to get rid of any trace of them, and then threw the murder weapon into the Anacostia River. There was no confirmation to any of his testimony, just the word of a man with every incentive to lie in order to save himself. In the immediate aftermath of the murder, police conducted a canvass of the neighborhood and spoke to various residents of the apartment complex where Shamika was murdered. Police went to the victim's apartment building and could not find any eyewitnesses who saw or heard anything. There were only 2 residents of the apartment complex who claimed to have seen anything remotely suspicious. First was Julie Kuhn, who according to police records claimed,
on Friday or Saturday around the time it was getting dark, she observed a gray or silver car speed into the complex, drive to the top, then drive back down and continue out of the complex at a high rate of speed. The car was driven by a black male, and the windows were all down, so she didn't know if the car had any kind of tinted windows.
Next was Tammy Hetrick, who gave a more extensive statement to police. Hetrick claimed she was hanging with 4 friends when one of them noticed a man pacing outside her apartment around 12:15 in the morning. The man went into the second floor window, then left. Hetrick described the man as black and 5'5" and wasn't thin and wasn't heavy. The man then got into a black car that pulled out very shortly thereafter. Tjane Marshall at 6'1" doesn't fit that description. Ultimately, there were no eyewitnesses of the crime itself, and the only eyewitness to someone near the scene of the crime described a man who looked nothing like Tjane Marshall.
Cell phone records were integral to the prosecution's case as they were used to place Tjane throughout the evening like a tracking system, even though cell tower records from 2003 aren't as accurate as the prosecution let on. Jeanette DeBoissier, Twane's public defender, asserted of the state's strategy, the state tries to make it look like a tracking system by showing a pattern of what we called of what route he must have been taking if that was a GPS tracking system. But it's not. Without seeing any contact with other cell site locations of other people, we don't know what it means. There was also one notable piece of information from the phone calls that will remain unknown, a phone call Tjane placed to Shamika at 2:40 a.m. with her cousin, Joseph Jones, an hour after she would have passed away. Such information would have created an alibi and been integral to proving Twan's innocence, but it was never presented at trial because it wasn't realized until well after the fact. From the summary of Twan's phone records used at trial, however, you cannot prove Shamika picked up on the other line, as cell phone records expert Jerry Grant explains about that phone call.
You know something happened and it transpired and it took 50 seconds to complete. Without the other side, you don't know. If you got the victim's phone records, actual call detail records, then on their side, you can tell if it was an incoming call rerouted to voicemail. But from this record alone, no. You don't know anything that happened on the other side.
Without access to Shamika's records and the ability to find Joseph Jones to introduce this new evidence, what is probably Twan's best chance at proving his innocence will remain a mystery.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the highest standard of proof in this country, where the burden rests on the prosecution. The jury can only give a guilty verdict if there is such convincing evidence that the only reasonable interpretation of the facts is the defendant is clearly guilty. The criminal justice system led Twan down a long road. At trial, he arrived at a brick wall. Reasonable doubt. It was the government's job to knock down every brick. Otherwise, that doubt still exists. We presented 4 bricks the government did not knock down, yet Twan has spent his last 15 years behind bars. A grave injustice was done to Twan and to many more around this country. In the words of Sir William Blackstone, it's better that 10 guilty persons escape than 1 innocent suffer. We,
Matthew Morrow,
Hashwinder Singh,
and Ky-Ana McKay, believe in the innocence of Twan Marshall.